Okay, thank you for joining us on the Anarchist Experience. My name is Robert Kruger. I am your host, and we have the co-host Daniel Rothschild with us, and he's brought a guest with him. Go ahead and introduce your guest, Dan.
Yes, his name is Joe Kent. He's a nice guy. He's an anarchist, and I don't know what else do you want people to know about you, Joe.
I live in Hawaii. Yeah.
You live in Hawaii, all right. Okay, well, we are going to start off with a question that is posed by a YouTube personality. His name is the Justicar. He has had a lot of different comments about the atheist community's debacle with um, the elevator gate thing, which they call the non-controversy, because it wasn't a controversy. He has lots of comments about uh, atheist stuff with Thunderfoot and
Is the elevator gate like Watergate, but with an elevator?
yeah. So anyway, his most recent desires or designs for criticism and bitching and moaning, which he apparently tends to do a lot of, and acting superior, is most recently, I guess, the ANCAP position. And you know what? Truth be told, he actually does present himself quite accurately, and he's more correct than the people that he's criticizing in almost every time that I've seen what he's done. He's been spot on when it comes to criticism of anarchists, I mean not anarchists, but atheists who are critical of arguments from the Christian apologists like Ray Comfort, for example. His points being correct there, however, seem to not very well carry over into his criticism or questions for anarcho-capitalists. In this particular example, he kind of goes a little bit off the rails and thinks that it just can't be done and it doesn't work. Oh my gosh, you can't explain this one away, and you're bad parents if you don't want to do everything that you possibly can to save your child and so on. So here's the deal, the question, and it's basically it's the simple standard question that we get asked all the time in anarcho-capitalist boards, or on Facebook, people will ask us these questions and so on. How would a non-government agency have the authority to go in and do things like violate people's property in the case of criminal actions? This particular question is, let's assume that you have your child stolen from you, and your child is stolen from you and kidnapped and put into sexual slavery for a child, a pedophile. Okay, now the situation is really bad. I mean, obviously we don't really want to have pedophiles being able to take children and do their thing with them. But the fact is that anarcho-capitalism is not a utopia. We know that there will be bad shit happening. We can't prevent all crime. It will happen. There will be people who will take children and will have child, prostitution or rape. So, I've got to mute this guy. Let's see. All right. So, what we are looking at is, how does a situation where a child gets kidnapped in the first place, what does the statist solution end up being, and what does the anarchist solution end up being, and compare them, and then we go into each and every single step along the way as far as the process. Okay, that's what my idea is how to deal with it and address this particular question, to address that every single step along the way. Which one's going to be more efficient? Which one is actually going to get a resolution that actually achieves the good result of getting back the kid as quickly as possible and with a minimum of damage, as possible. Another thing that he points out or suggests is that there's going to just be a net loss, period. That there is no profit to be made for the people who spend the money and the resources to fund the expedition to retrieve this child from bondage. So those are his questions. Those are the criticisms. Before I go through the step-by-step analysis, I'd like to go ahead and get your guys' input and response on how to answer this particular question. What do you think?
Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, so I see, let me see if I have this right. So there's two things going on. One is, would there be a market for kid security? And the other is, could we go on somebody else's property to get our kid back? Is that correct? I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, basically, you're going to be violating people's property to search for the children. You might have leads or whatever. You're going to have to do a variety of different invasive searches. How are you going to get the authority to do this? Who's going? How would the funding end up happening? So in your mind, guess as to what would happen, I guess.
Okay, so my guess would be there would be companies that there is a market for kid security right now. I mean even today there's a market for kid security. Look at how many kids have cell phones, and a lot of times their cell phones are better than mine. I mean I teach at a public school, and all the kids have cell phones that are better than mine. It's just hilarious. And I'm like, how did you get that expensive cell phone? Obviously, it's because their parent wants to buy them a cell phone so that they always know where the kid is. They've got these GPS, tracking things, and they've got GPS watches and the Obama phone, right? And so there is a market for already for security and GPS and locating, and most child kidnappers today are caught by these GPS devices, so it's already happening. And I wonder if there would be some kind of market for, let's say that there was a watch, some kind of child protection watch, and the watch company went and retrieved the kid somehow, and they get a lot of media coverage, and they make a lot of sales of their little watch, and so I think that's probably a good business idea for somebody. So yeah, I don't see a problem with finding a market for bringing kids back to their parents. Now, the second question is if could we violate someone else's property rights? I mean, isn't it that libertarians are against the initiation of force, and so isn't it an initiation if someone steals something from you, and then aren't we justified to get it back? So on either kind, I kind of shrug my shoulders and say, is this really a problem? And it sounds to me like anarcho-capitalism would have a safer society for kids than the one we live in today.
And what's your take on it, Rothschild?
All right. Well, first let me vent, and then I'll do it. I think it's funny how people call ANCAPs utopians, where they pretty much want a solution to all problems. Well, there's this problem that exists, and we want you to tell us how it will be eradicated under anarchy. Now, first of all, not a requirement for anything. I mean, all anarchists have to pretty much say is, well, does government solve the solution? And as long as we can say how there'll be less under anarchy than under government, that should be sufficient. Because if government can't solve the problem, and you're willing to accept the government anyway, why do you not accept an anarchist society under the same standards? Why this double standard? Why every problem has to be solved first before we can have anarchy, but not every problem has to be solved first when we have to have a government? It doesn't really seem fair to me. Another thing that I would say is that, is this view of his unique, right? Is he just like a moral, ethical guy, and he's really one of the few concerned people who really cares about children being kidnapped, and he is willing to have part of his money taken from him by force to give to the government so they can find these child kidnappers? Well, I don't think he is. I think there are many people who care about children, pretty much anyone who's not a total dick. cares about children, and even total dicks care about children, but just not in the right way. So everyone pretty much is concerned about children, and without a government, why wouldn't you have charities? It doesn't, he comes to the straw man position that everything in life is going to be for profit. Who says? If people are willing to accept the government taking a percentage of their income and using it to find children kidnappers, why wouldn't there be a charity organization donated to the same thing? Now, your second part, well, people are going to have to violate property to find a kid. I don't think Joe really answered it because it's possible you might have to search other people's house who didn't kidnap the guy to find the kid, and who are not thieves. Well, I think if a guy prevents this, and it's shown that, we were able to find the kid, and this guy prevented us from finding the kid, and the kid died as a result, what is stopping people from publishing his name, from exposing it and saying, our kid would have lived if it weren't for Joe Sixpack or whatever, and now everyone thinks that this Joe Sixpack is a total dick for not letting people just check out his front yard for a few minutes, and there might be a lot of rioting, there might be a lot of, we're not going to hire this guy, and stuff like that. Also, an anarchist society is not just going to come tomorrow. The only way any type of society can arise is when the majority of the population accept it. Right now, the majority of the population accepts statism, but under a society of anarchy, there is going to be a mentality of respect for other people's rights. So there'll be less child abuse, and child abuse is what creates a lot of these things. There'll less be hitting children. So I think there'll be a reduction, and that's sort of my long-winded answer.
Okay.
But I hope
Well, then, let's go through it step by step.
Sure.
One, we've got the kid has to be kidnapped. Okay. Well, obviously we've got some people who have kids that they may not be well off. They don't necessarily have the ability to buy the watch that keeps track of where their kid is, and not to mention, these people are not stupid. They're going to take the watch off the kid. You might get your kid with a chip where they can locate them just like they do with animals, or a GPS locator that you embed in your child's body. Okay, well, maybe rich people might do that. Certainly very, very powerful, influential people might do that. But, the average, everyday poor person probably not going to do that. So, first off, when we're dealing with a voluntary society, what we're going to see is advancements in technology faster and more reliably, and specifically in areas where there is a demand. Now, if this is an issue, there's going to be a demand for solutions. One of them might possibly be that the institutions that run roadways in these locations where kidnappings are happening might actually start tracking drivers. Might put up cameras and be able to, show, all right, well, there's these people who are traveling upon these roads at this time, and we know when the child was abducted, and then we can follow the various different people who left that location and track them down and then see if they've got the kid. So you're looking at, potentially a more surveillance state type of situation. Well, that's not exactly that desirable for a lot of people, but I would certainly much prefer to have cameras that were run by the road company to ensure that they could trace or track people for violations of their property than I would be, let's say, for a government to have cameras. When you go into like a department store, you realize that there are going to be cameras there for shoplifting. Nobody seems to have a problem with those. Why? Because they're only used for dealing with shoplifting. So in the case of the privacy issue about having cameras on the road, or maybe they might just be, the ability to track cars based upon a chip that's in the car or other advancements. So, following somebody on a road seems to be a lot more likely and more easily done in an anarcho-capitalist society. Now, we go to the next step. All right, well, we know that this kid's been stolen away, but we don't know where the kid is. All right, we've got to do some questions, and we've got to interview people that might be out there that we could find, and ask them, do you have this kid? Well, how are we going to violate their property rights to go ask them these questions? Well, most people don't consider it a violation of your property rights to have somebody come to your door and say, hey, I was wondering if I could borrow a cup of sugar. So if somebody came to your door and says, hey, I was wondering if you could help me try to locate this child, we have reason to believe that they might be on your property somewhere. And then the person says, no, get the fuck out. And then, like Rothschild was saying, then you can use the power of reputation and their contracts with other companies to deal with them. Whether it be, well, we're going to shut off your gas and your electricity and your ability to travel, and we're not going to sell you groceries until you let us actually look through the property. We're not going to deal with you in that way. Sure, that's a possibility. Another possibility is that they may actually have an agreement with a security company, and the security company has installed cameras in their home to film their their possessions, so that they don't have to worry about stuff getting stolen, like the kid. Now, if they have all of these cameras in their own home, they can go ahead and just say, well, call up my security company, the ones that are protecting me, and have them confirm that I don't have a kid here. And that company does it. How do we actually get out into those homes that people are not willing to let us enter, but they have their own financial backing? They have already set up a compound. They've got a very, very large compound. They've got their own food, their own water. They've got their own energy supply. So how we can't cut off anything that matters to them. They're not going to be pressured into letting us into their property. But we don't know if the kid's in there or not. Well, you do the same thing that the police does eventually. You bust down the door and you go looking. And then you find the kid if it's there, and you then start to prosecute the person. Now, if the kid's not there, then you have to give restitution to the people for violating their property rights. Now, in the case of the government doing it, these innocent people who just did not want to have the government on their property, who then had their property rights violated by the government, have no recourse or no redress for any sort of financial compensation. They are victims too. They are screwed by the government when they have their property violated. Their door is broken. They've got to replace that. They've got to deal with all the damage that's done by the police when they're doing these raids. But nobody ever worries about the innocent people who are persecuted by the government in their attempts to get back this child.
Right. And let me also, just sorry to interrupt, but let me add, there was a case recently where this 3-year-old girl was missing, and this guy went over this guy's fence into his property and killed the guy's dog. And like later, it just turned out she was found in her home.
Yeah.
So I have a pet. The police come over my property, kill my animal. Who a lot of people are attached to their pets. Have some love. A lot of these things can end in violence. If I don't want you on my property, the police would let me on. Maybe they can be shot and killed. These. There's always a victim when the state's involved.
Yeah. So we definitely have to deal with that in obviously the superiority of the anarchist solution, where people are compensated for their losses. If they have their property violated by this search and they were wrongly searched, they should get compensation. But they're not in the state of society. So that's a cost that is additionally borne that wouldn't exist in an anarcho-capitalist society, borne by an innocent victim. So then let's say we finally find the person who's actually got the kid. Okay, we get the kid, take them, they're taken off to whatever particular location to have, medical treatment and all that kind of stuff. Well, obviously the medical treatment you're going to get in in whatever sort of anarcho-capitalist society is going to be superior, because they again are getting a more advanced technology, better pay for the people who are qualified to provide the service, because you actually get rewarded for doing your job well. So then, what about the medical care that you're going to get in a statist society? Well, it's going to be kind of cookie cutter. It's going to be one size fits all, and the idea of law then is also cookie cutter. That there is only one particular way of dealing with these types of things. The problems with the existing statist solution for how to deal with this is that it never ever compensates the victim of the crime either. Whereas in an anarcho-capitalist system, the victim of the crime, let's say the parents and the child, they actually will be able to attach a lien on this person and their property. They'll be able to get judgments for money, for property against this person, and to seize it and make it their own and sell it and do whatever the hell they want with it and actually be compensated. Now, in a United States government situation, what happens with that property? It actually goes typically to the criminal. The criminal actually maintains the ownership of the property, and they can give it to their heirs. They can sell it. They can do whatever the hell they want to it. All they want is just to be able to put the person into a box, and they act like that's justice. That's not justice. There's
wait, I'm sorry, I got lost. So yeah, let's say I'm going back to this kidnapping thing. The kid's kidnapped. The person isn't giving him up, and then we get to have a lien on their property.
No. After the person is caught, let's say that we find the person, we go in and we get the kid. Okay, so once we've established that yes, you did kidnap my child. This child was kidnapped by you, and now you're going to be tried in a court. One of the actions that court is going to be able to do is to put either liens on the property or to outright confiscate the property and sell it, and then give those monies that come from that sale to the victims. Obviously, you're going to have some of the costs paid out from this property that is going to be taken and sold.
You're talking about for compensation.
Compensation for the loss of their child for that period of time and the loss of the child's innocence. And so the child would then receive, let's say, imagine it would be a trust upon reaching the age of, let's say, 14, 15, something like that. They gain access to it, or maybe 18, 21. I don't know what age, but the question is there any sort of redress or any sort of compensation for the victims of the crime in the current status system that we have? And there is not. They get no compensation. All they get is perhaps some free medical care, maybe some free transportation from where the kid was to where the parents are. Okay? That's about it. There's no real compensation at all. So the victims actually can benefit, at least marginally, somewhat, in order to make up for the loss that they've had. Now, the more difficult that the person is going to be to track down and to find, the more money you have to spend to try to find them. But in order to actually be capable of eluding justice in an advanced technology society that we're talking about, you have to have some equipment that is of significant advanced level of ability. So the more capable of avoiding justice the person is, the more stuff that they've got that's worth selling that actually is of value. So if they've got soundproofed equipment, soundproofing equipment in their home to prevent the child's screams from being heard by neighbors. Well, this soundproofing stuff can actually be sold because it's valuable for people who are trying to do, let's say, music in their recording studios and things like that. So the harder it is to get the kid, the more likely it is that you're going to get something, things of value that are going to be sellable. All right, so then as far as the kidnapper and the child rapist, what is it that you're going to deal with? How is it that this person is going to be dealt with as far as justice? In the United States, currently the sentence, the amount of time that somebody is going to get for having kidnapped, what is it? Something detainment or some, I forget. The raping of the child. Well, what's the amount of time that they're going to get in jail? It's actually less than, let's say, somebody who was arrested for dealing in illicit drugs. How is that possibly logical or make any sense? Now, in the case of an anarcho-capitalist society, actually, the cost of his incarceration would be borne by him, whereas the cost of his incarceration in a statist solution is borne by everyone else. This creates bad incentives as far as the justice system goes, but we can get into that at some other point in time. But overall, the cost of his incarceration, if he, basically, by having committed these acts, he has given implicit consent to his own kidnapping and torture for anyone to do. Anyone who wants to practice their tattoo artistry or practice their new, test out their new drug, or to explore their sadistic fantasies, now has a willing person who has agreed to have all of these things done to him at any point in time by any other person on the planet. Because by his implicit consent, when he violated that child's rights to self-ownership, he declared, "I do not accept self-ownership as a concept. What's good for the goose is good for the gander." So that means this guy is going to be for fear for his own life from anyone that has whatever weird fantasies about what they want to do to another person's body. So, what's he going to do? If he's in a situation where anybody can come along and do whatever experiments they want with him, he's got to protect himself from that. So the only way that he can protect himself from that is to hire a company who has, let's say, a hotel or a jail, if you want to call it that, and he has to pay them to protect his ass, to make sure that he doesn't actually suffer some weird-ass fate. So he's the one that's responsible for paying for that. And if he can't do it, then too bad for him. He's going to end up being stuck out on the streets or whatever, and anybody and everybody can have at him, and they can do whatever the hell they want to him. Now, that sounds really cruel as far as a punishment for the person who's done these acts in certain respects. I mean, a lot of people have very differing sensibilities as to what should be done with a child rapist. But it's a heinous act that he's done there, and by being consistent with his choice of accepting or not accepting self-ownership, he's already put himself out there. That was his choice. So
you're saying that if somebody kidnapped a child and was caught, they would have to pay for the damages. And they would be inviting themselves to a rejection of their property rights, and in which case they might have to pay to go to a voluntary jail.
Otherwise, other people would, by their own actions, have permission to do what they want with his body. But keep in mind, this is only if the child was not only kidnapped, but then also sexually assaulted, raped. if the person was just kidnapped and held for ransom, let's say, then he also would then have given permission to have himself detained by anyone for any length of time with any demand. And so he probably, in that particular case, may want to. I would guess that in his case, in the case of a kidnapping where there was no penetration, actually, even in either case, now that I think about it, the person who's the perpetrator, the actor who has done bad, he does have an out. I mean, he can actually create a situation where he can get out of the I've given everybody permission to do whatever the hell they want with me. What he does is he gets retroactive consent. Now, obviously, a child giving consent is a very difficult thing, but if the child is grown up to, at some point, let's say the child is now 18 years old, they give retroactive consent, well then, in order for that to happen, he's going to have to, let's say the child requires that he go to some therapy. The child, now requires that the person give them, let's say, 60% of their income for the rest of their life, plus a down payment of by selling 60% of the person's entire assets. Maybe that's what they require. But each person can make that, contract happen. They have an incentive to do it, because if they don't, obviously they're at risk of experiencing some really bad stuff. So then the question finally gets to, how is it going to be funded? Who's going to actually fund the search? Because, as he said in the video, he's actually correct. It is a net loss, and the only thing that you get a recoup from is if you actually do catch the person who took the kid. Sometimes you might never catch the kid. So this is where Rothschild was absolutely correct. If we have a society of people who are willing to have a certain percentage of their income go to fund this thing called the state, this Leviathan, you don't think that they might actually, I don't know, contribute funds to a kidnapper finding fund or something, there's going to be a philanthropic efforts to see that kids are brought to justice, that are kidnappers are brought to justice. So I just don't see that as being a legitimate argument. So,
but what if there wasn't? I mean, could there be something like a kid insurance company that you could pay? And so I was kind of thinking about this, well, let's say that I paid whatever, $100 a year to a kid insurance company to make sure that my kid was never kidnapped. And obviously I know a lot of parents that would probably do that. and so then if the insurance company couldn't find my kid, let's say my kid was kidnapped and the insurance company couldn't find my kid, then they would have to pay me money. And if they did find my kid, then they would make a profit. And so they'd have incentive. But then now I'm thinking, so what's to stop me from kidnapping my own kid and pushing him off a cliff and then getting a bunch of money?
Well, okay.
Well,
the same reason you can't burn down your home to collect home insurance.
They catch you. Now there are definitely going to be some people who do get away with arson of their own property and collecting insurance claims. It happens. With the fact that insurance companies have a vested interest in making sure that people don't get away with it, so it doesn't become a common occurrence. Well, there you go. That's okay. They're going to invest in technology to protect their investments. So let's say they require that if you're going to have child insurance, that you're going to have to put a tracker on your child or whatever. There's a variety of different technologies that they're going to try to implement.
I think we've taken way too long talking about this, but I mean, the only really answer you really have to give is what does the government lose if they what are the incentives if a private business fails in protecting you, and they fail enough, they're not going to be in business very long. What does the government lose if they don't find your kid? Nothing. Nothing. Their only quote is when it comes to generating revenue for the government. There's not quotes in terms of how many people you have to stop from killing each other. The government's not going to go bankrupt. The police department's not going to lose its funds if they don't find a kidnapper. So what do they care?
Actually, they're going to get an increase in funds. They've got an incentive.
Right, the opposite. Everyone's going to say, oh, they don't have enough money to catch people. Give them more money. Right, yeah. So they have every incentive to ensure that they fail.
Exactly.
Unlike private business. So that's really the 2 minutes. We could have saved 20 minutes, Robert. That's the only answer you could have gave.
No. But the point is that you have to actually, you have to break down some of these things. I mean, the bottom line is,
our audience might be bored, though. I mean, they're going to say, come on, move it already.
All right. Well, I think that we got a good point there. All right. So then we've got, all right.
What's next on the list?
Who's this fellow that keeps trying to join, by the way?
Yeah.
I asked him. Do you know this Trump Schreiber guy?
Okay. Ignore that, please. Let's move on.
Sorry.
All right. So, the question comes up, well, anarchism, what you guys are talking about, has never been tried. And if you look anywhere in the world where government fails, you will find powerful men leveraging force. They brought down the government so that they could have their way, and now they've got these warlords taken over and so on. That we are actually better off having a government to prevent these warlords from taking over. So the question is then, wouldn't warlords take over? Why wouldn't warlords, big mafiosos and so on, maybe not mafiosos, that's not, not a good example. Why wouldn't they take over? So what's your spin on that question there, Daniel?
That's the stupidest objection to anarchism I've ever heard in my life. By far. We need a bunch. That's like, so we need a mafia in order to prevent other smaller mafias from being created. If I don't rape you, 10 other men will. So in order to protect that, I have to just, rape you. I mean, this is the stupidest. There are a lot of stupid objections to anarchism, but this is by far the difference. Warlords? What? Don't they call the president the commander-in-chief? The government itself is just a warlord. Your biggest fear of anarchism is that it's going to turn into a government, so we need a government to ensure it doesn't turn into a government? That's really what the objection is saying.
It is kind of stupid, and I mean, quite frankly, in my experience with...
I'm afraid you're going to steal my wallet. Here it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we actually look at the historical records as far as what percentage of a business's income was taken by the strong-armed thugs who were giving protection money, things of that nature, I guarantee you it wasn't anywhere on any level close to what it is that the U.S. government does to stealing from their subjects now.
Okay, but I wanna pretend that it's a smart argument, and let's pretend that we have an America is the only country that has become anarcho-capitalist. Someone pushed the button. And now we've got all these countries that are coming to invade us. China and Canada has somehow acquired arms, and they're coming into the country. Okay, so then what's the solution?
Well, when the Mounties are coming to kill you,
it's a very unrealistic situation.
I know.
All right.
Well, first of all, when America does something, other countries copy it. So typically, so if America was the first country to become anarchist, it might, be a fad. But I am being glib there. But secondly, people, are going to attack people who are going to give in. There's a famous, my favorite Calvin and Hobbes cartoon is a bully is picking on Calvin, and he says, "Why do you pick on someone your own size?" And the bully says, "Because they fight back." So governments are going to attack people. One, where people are already have a mentality of being subservient, which you're not going to find in an anarchist society where every single person is well armed, where it's not just a few people, and if you take them over, then you can rule over everyone else. You're actually going to have to fight everyone pretty much in that country, and that's a lot. That's so hard, and that's such a big loss. One of the reasons that Hitler didn't invade Germany is that the Swiss said, tell them that if the Germans say that we surrender, that it's a bunch of bullshit. We're gonna go until every last man is standing, and that's just too big a loss for a country to do. So you're going to attack governments where the people have a mentality of being subservient and then following the strong person, not one where people are self-reliant and don't have the mentality of just following a leader.
Okay, well, let's just look at the idea of the Swiss. By the way, it wasn't Hitler didn't attack Germany because Hitler took control of Germany. I think you meant to say Hitler didn't attack Switzerland.
Right, that's what I meant. Sorry.
That's right. So the Swiss, they have a policy that basically says that all able-bodied men, and I don't know if it's also includes women, should get trained in how to use firearms and actually possess them for a certain period of time as being part of the defense force. I don't know if it's all of them, but certainly a very large percentage of their population has weapon training and has weapons. This is a policy that's part of their government, and so then the question is, could a society like the United States actually have people doing this in a voluntary militia type of situation? And the question is already answered. We did it. We already did do it. That's what the initial founding fathers, when they started the overthrow of the British, did. They went out and they talked to people and they said, come join us in our rebellion. And they did join the rebellion. Now, they of course threatened some people to conscript them, and obviously we wouldn't want to do that. But, I mean, realistically, if you look at in the state of Texas, I guarantee you it could happen. Okay? In the state of New Mexico, probably could happen. In the state of Arizona, definitely could happen. Colorado, yes, definitely. Wyoming, yeah. New York, maybe not. Maybe New York. But then again, you know what? They've got if the gang problem disappeared because we no longer have being made illegal, drugs are now legal, then what are they going to do with all these firearms? Are they just going to sell them? Maybe. I don't know. I think that they actually like the idea of being able to put a cap in somebody's ass. So somebody comes in here and tries to screw around with them. I just don't see that we're just going to roll over and take it. One of the things that's very important about a warlord taking over is the idea that they are not legitimized. It isn't the power of the guns that keeps us people in line as a part of a state. What keeps us in line is our belief that it's legitimate, that we actually have some requirement to obey these people who are from Washington or from your local state capital. This mythology that they have authority over us is what screws us up in our response to dealing with the actions that they do. If we actually had looked at all these different actions in the police force that have recently been going on, where you've got a guy being kidnapped and taken to a hospital and they forcibly insert instruments into his anus to check for drugs, we would never accept that. I mean, can you imagine some random guy from, I don't know, Walmart decides that he's going to go ahead and inspect what's up your butt, grabs you and throws you down on a table? You would not actually go back to that place afterwards and shoot people? Would you not actually deal with that with violence? Obviously you would. If you had some crazed nut jobs doing these things, you would act in a manner that is appropriate, which is to defend yourself or to seek to prevent it from happening again by using violence against them. But since we legitimize the state, since we accept it as being a norm that we don't do that, that's what keeps us in line.
So this kind of reminds me of the socialist man argument, though, on the other side, to where the only way socialism will work, or once socialism is in place, is that we'll have a new socialist man who will be kinder and more productive and fitter and happier. And isn't that the same thing that we're saying with anarcho-capitalism, that in order for anarcho-capitalism to work, we have to have a new anarcho-capitalist man?
No,
No.
I don't believe people. I don't believe in making the world a better place or mankind being a better place. People can just be as rotten as they are now and have anarchy, right? I don't think the solution to evil is giving a bunch of people a legitimized use of force. The solution to evil isn't having one of these people seek political office and have a haven they can run to called Washington, D.C. So I don't believe that any improvement of mankind is necessary. Quite the opposite. In order for government to not be to not end up in genocide and be totalitarianness and throwing people into jail for victimless crimes, you need a new man. But to have anarchy, no, I'm not interested in having people become better. Humans are what they are. I'm not interested in improving them. I'm just interested in removing this one evil superstition from people's lives.
Yeah, all you have to do is just stop people from thinking that the state is a legitimate representation of, I don't know, whatever it is that they think is righteousness. You know, we went through these periods in history, and when I deal with people who propose this argument, they say, well, show me when it's been, you know, if it's so good, why hasn't it already happened?
You know, if slavery is so good, how come there's so many societies with slaves, Robert?
Yeah, obviously. You know, or you know, if having women being you know, on equal levels, why is it that we don't have that now? Back in the day, you know, when there was only Europe and we didn't, you know, and Africa and you know, the United States and South America hadn't even been, you know, discovered.
Yeah.
We can't have freedom from women, you know, for women to do whatever they want. No, but realistically, if we look at what has gone through time as we've progressed as a species, we went through a divine right of kings, or actually, we had rulers that were gods on earth. They were actually deities on this planet who were telling us what to do. And then we went to, well, they're actually anointed by God to be kings and rule over us. And then we went to, all right, well, they're actually sanctioned by the church, who is anointed by God. So now, we moved them a step further and further and further away from God. All right, so this is a religious institution in all actuality. Governments are religious institutions. They prey upon the same thought process that we have this divine ruler, this God who is over us, who has authority, and they claim authority from him. So we keep separating it further and further and further away from that God by some reasoning that is going on in our minds where we're like, it doesn't make sense. I can't see this God. I don't know. So maybe, but I can see a church, or I can see, you know, this king, and so on. So when we keep pushing it and pushing it further and further away, we finally get to a point where now we're at the divine right of the masses, or the vote. This idea that somehow there's authority that is granted to these legislators because we all vote for them, and there's this divine right of paper because this Constitution said X, Y, or Z. Well, now it's an even further level away from it. But of course, if you look at where those papers come from, you're going to get a lot of people from the religious right who are going to say, well, it was found they were based on Christian, you know, Judeo-Christian values.
That's funny because the exact same argument is used against atheists, and when people say that all countries and all societies have come up with their own version of God, and therefore God exists. And it's the same thing that's it reminds me of this argument that all countries have come up with their own version of government, and therefore we need a government. And anyways, I want to ask a related question: is would there be submarines and aircraft carriers if in an anarcho-capitalist America? Do you think?
I can't predict the future. How do I know?
Yeah, we're talking about crystal ball shit here, but sure. Would there be aircraft carriers? Maybe there might be some use for them as far as a entertainment industry. People selling, come ride your F-14. Go ahead and take off on a strip that's out in the middle of the ocean. I just don't see it as being very economically feasible. But there's this concept I can't imagine being profitable called Disneyland because
Yeah.
somehow people are convinced, oh, let's stand in line for, I don't know, let's say 3 hours of an 8-hour day so that we can ride on rides which can be mimicked fairly closely at my local amusement park where I don't have to wait in lines for forever. I don't understand it, but it worked. Okay, there's different interests that people are going to have, and some people might have an interest in flying F-14, so maybe that's a big deal. But we can't really predict the future. All right, so this next question, let's see. Oh wait, that's right. Kenji had a point on the YouTube comments section. It says you can also turn the argument around on people who ask these questions. Ask them to show a government system that hasn't failed. Well, they're going to give an example. They're going to say Sweden. They're going to say the United States. And so, yeah.
The United States has failed. It was designed to be one of the smallest governments, and now, you know what? If America sneezes, the whole world gets sick. Is that the line? I mean, America's totally failed. Right, as Lysander Spooner said, either the Constitution has authorized such a government as we have had, or it has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist. We're a total, people say that America is a very individualist society, and I'm like, if that's true, that says less about America's individualism than the crap that is everywhere else, and the total collectivism everywhere else. Fine, in a world of shit, America's the piss, but who cares?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that people, the liberal mindset would say it hasn't failed. It's done what it's supposed to do. It's evolved over time. We've got a living constitution that can change and breathe and become new things, and that's what it's become as a nanny state, which is what we really need.
I think it's better to say the liberal sect. I don't know how much mind there is there.
All right. So moving on to the next question here. The fact is, we are governed by consent.
Ooh, we are?
Yeah.
How come there are people who don't agree with what the government's doing?
Well, I'm an anarchist.
Does my explicit dissent override any implied consent? That's like if I say to a woman, you want to have sex? And she says no, and I say, you say no, but really, you mean yes. If I say I don't consent, how the hell can you tell me I do?
You're lying underneath me. I mean, seriously, that's the stupidest argument ever. The idea that, okay, you're using the roads. The government made those roads, so obviously you're consenting.
So the Jews ate soup in the Holocaust, and a person eats prison food. They must be consenting to be in prison because they eat the prison food, right?
Obviously. It was funny when Daniel, I saw this on Daniel's Facebook page. He found the social contract. He found it, and you want to explain that?
I'm actually living in Berkeley now, but there's a hot dog place called Top Dog. Anyone who lives in Berkeley, they're like $3, and it's a libertarian owner. So if you want to support it, they're not paying me to say this, but maybe I'll show them this video and get a free hot dog. But so they have on their wall all this libertarian stuff by like Tom G. Palmer and Murray Rothbard and all this stuff. And one of the things that they had was, no one ever wrote down the social contract. So I decided to, and it was basically, I agreed that the government may decide how much money and what it's going to go to at any time, and may jail me if I don't consent, and I have no redress to complain. So obviously, it's just a total one-way contract. I mean, the idea that we have You know, anyone who says that, it's very two-faced, the people who say this, because people who say, well, by living here you consent. Well, if that's true, then shut up and never ever complain when the government does something. Well, I don't like how the government's acting. What do you mean? I thought you said it's consent, so shut the fuck up. If you truly believe the bullshit you spew, never ever complain, because you must agree, as long as you don't live in the ocean, to what the government is doing. You don't leave when you must use your own argument. Don't just use the argument with us, use it to yourself. The next time people complain about, people always complain, oh, those Republicans, oh, those Democrats, oh, that guy, oh, this guy. What do you mean? I thought it was consent. Shut the fuck up.
Agreed. Okay, well, I'm going to get back to this comment, but there's a comment from the YouTube comments there, and let's see, Straight Dope asks, how would you deal with a person who rejects your claim to land? In other words, how would you deal with a person who does not believe you can actually own land?
Take your shirt.
It sounds kind of you know, nonchalant response, just like this flippant thing, but you know what? It's actually correct. If the person, you know, does not accept property ownership, take their property and see how they respond. At some point, you're going to be taking away whatever it is that's protecting their gonads from the environment, and they might get you know, a little bit embarrassed about their position and come to a realization that, okay, well, maybe I actually do accept property ownership. But then they're going to come back and say, well, wait. That's personal property. What you're talking about is land ownership. And so what you then do is you find where they're sleeping, and you move them. You push them off of whatever it is that they're sleeping on, and you say, you can't sleep here, I'm going to sleep here. This, you know, well, this is where I'm sleeping. Well, I want to sleep there. This is my place to sleep. So you're claiming that this is your property to sleep there? Well, gee golly gosh, I guess you do accept property ownership, don't you? Do you accept property ownership for having a domicile where you live and actually can keep your personal property, which is not land? Don't you have to have land to have a domicile? You do. Okay, well then, they say, well, okay, well, that's not the issue. Then what I want to do is I want to actually have personal domiciles, personal property. But when it comes to the means of production, that's just out. You can't do that. Well,
you can't own the means of production?
Well, what about if I don't know.
Have sex with his wife.
Oh, dude, that's just wrong. No. Actually, let's
that too far?
Daniel, I'm going to have to get a new host. I'm going to have you not keep things serious. Let's keep it serious, man. All right.
I am being serious. I'm adding some levity. All right.
Okay. No, levity's not seriousness. All right. The seriousness is, let's say, I want to have the ability to make, I don't know, baked goods in my home, like an oven. I think having an oven is a personal property, isn't it? Well, I suppose that you could actually have an oven. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you might want to be able to cook yourself some food. Well, what if I cook some food and then give it to somebody else, and in exchange for that they give me a massage because they like my food and I like their massages? Is that acceptable? Well, sure, obviously. Well, then what if they don't have an oven but they want to come over and use my oven? Well, obviously that's fine, you know. What if I say, well, if you're going to use my oven, I want a massage? Okay. Maybe I don't like their massages, so I'm going to say, actually, could you get Joe to give me a massage? Whatever. Bottom line is now that they're trading to use my oven in my home domicile, and that's fine. But somehow it's different if my domicile is of a certain size, it's too big, and I've got people paying to go into my domicile and use my oven to produce their own food. That's called a factory. I don't have to live there. You know, I could be on vacation and somebody's using my domicile and my oven to make their bread, and they're giving me compensation of some sort. It's ridiculous, this idea that you can't have property that is owned by you that is used by others who are giving you some sort of compensation for the use of it, whether it's compensation by doing the, giving you a portion of their labors or whatever. Daniel, stop the bleeping.
Sorry, it's my stupid Skype.
So, did that make sense to you guys?
You're saying what's the difference between a home and a factory when there are some home factories, and where do you draw the line, and yeah, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you can't draw the line. There is no point in drawing the line. If I personally can own a drill press because I like to do woodwork, I've got a saw, I've got a bandsaw, a drill, all these different workbench and things like that. What's the difference between that and, let's say, a place that has 2 of them or 3 of them?
Yeah, but what about this? So the argument where if somebody gets mad about you stealing their stuff, then that proves that there is property. But a lot of people get mad when you steal their intellectual property, and a lot of anarcho-capitalists don't consider that to be real property.
Well, first of all, it's a misnomer. It's intellectual property. No, an idea is not intellectual property. It is not something that if someone else has, you no longer have. It's not scarce. It's not rivalrous. In other words, if I take your idea and put it into use, does that stop you from taking your idea and putting it into use? No. Property requires that you have ownership, that only you can act upon it. It's your, you make the decisions for it. Now, with an idea, you can make decisions for your idea, that other people can make decisions for your idea, for their, their copy of your idea. It repeats itself without losing the original.
Right.
Now, the problem comes up then if somebody makes, I don't know, let's just say that somebody makes a book. They write a book and they release it. It's called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Okay. Then the next day a book comes out and it's called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, that's fine, but then it says by Beatrice Potter, and it says by Beatrice Potter. But the book's actually, the second book is being made by Joe Schmo. Well, that's fraud. And the customers who are buying the product, they're going to be able to take the person to court for fraud. And obviously, the Beatrice Potter is going to want to create that, make that happen. She's going to recommend that people make a class action lawsuit against the person committing fraud. So,
right. I mean, I understand that intellectual property and physical property are different, but I was just wondering about the tact. If somebody is mad about you stealing their property, then that's a good argument to prove that it is or it isn't property, and because people get mad about all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, well definitely it does. It does suggest that the anger issue is not what is the how do you deal with that? But realistically, you have to ask them why they're mad. What is it that gives them justification for their madness? And then they're going to say, well, because it's my shirt. And then you say, your shirt, well, that would imply that you have property. And if you don't accept property for me, how can you accept property for you? So you have to be consistent. Follow consistency rules. Now, if you have property and you're not willing to defend it, or you have no defending, nothing defending that property, then you're essentially putting it back out into the availability of, unowned property. Whether that defense is, significant, or whether it's a just a claim that says, hey, stop, don't take my property. That, that's all that it really takes. But definitely, it is something that is required. You have to at least be able to make a counterclaim. You have to at least say, no, that's mine. So let's take a look here. We had some quick responses back on there. And let's see. All right. He says we're idiots. We're not murdering. He's not murdering our damn dog for.
Who is that? Who's straight dope?
I don't know. Anyway, let's see.
I guess you can own the air above your land too.
Well, actually, to a point.
To have ownership, it has to be a finite in amount.
It has to be homesteaded, but yes, I do own the air above my home to a point.
Yeah.
I certainly have homesteaded the sunlight that is traveling to my property, which is giving my plants the ability to grow. So if you block out the sun and prevent me from getting sunlight, well, then you're infringing upon my homestead. If you are traveling above my home and it causes my home to shake with a tremendous flurry, like a Mach 1 jet, Mach 2, Mach 3, or something like that, with going and doing a flyby of my home, let's say 200 feet above it, well, then yes, you're definitely affecting my homestead in a way that can cause damage. But if you're flying above it, let's say at 10,000 feet, where's the property claim there? I can certainly try to make a claim in court that yes, you do. I've homesteaded whatever. Let's say the air above my land where the clouds are, and if now I'm getting rain that is full of pollutants that are falling down onto my home because of some company is putting chemicals in the air that cause acid rain, well, they are damaging my property because the rain is actually hitting my property. So you actually have to, you have to get stuff to affect the homesteaded property, not just out there. You can't just say dibs and point at it and say it's mine. You actually have to, homestead it. So let's see here. What we have. Straight Dope is still asking questions. Let's see. You could try to own whatever you want, but if we disagree, then we have a problem then, huh?
No, you can't just own whatever you want. Own isn't just taking something. I can't just take your shirt. I mean, I guess I could, but it's not legitimate ownership. It's you being a thug and a bully. Okay?
Yeah.
So I would tell, Straight Dope, don't be on dope, otherwise you wouldn't ask such questions. But, yeah, I mean, you can't just take, can I just take your shirt? I mean, anyone who says that they deny ownership should have no problem with people taking their belongings, right? Everyone who says this is a hypocrite, as far as I'm concerned. They don't actually live it.
Okay, so then he asks, well, I don't consent to your court.
So we go to a court that we both agree with.
Well, I don't consent to any court. I'll be the only...
When you're an outlaw and when someone victimizes you, no, I won't go to any court to seek damages against you. You really want that situation?
So the solution is a tit for tat.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, if you have no court, that means that anybody and everybody can take your stuff, and you have no court to seek justice with. Oh, okay, sounds like your life's going to be pretty miserable, huh? Maybe you might want to actually choose to have a court, some sort of one that other people are willing to, go to. So, kind of answers that one pretty clearly. Let's go back over here. Let's see. The rich use the state now, but they have no need of the state. That's why the rich are on your side. Oh,
This must be straight joke. This must be straight dope or crooked dope or someone on dope. Who wrote this?
Well, no, I'm not. I'm not on the dope guy anymore. I've come to. This is a DM Gray who had a question for the Mr. ANCAP. Basically, it says, without the state, nothing would stop a powerful individual taking what they wish. The rich use. The rich use the state now, but they have no need of the state. That's why the rich are on your side. Now, I just wanted to double check with you, Rothschild. What have you gotten up to as far as your donations for spewing this, rich propaganda?
Oh, I've got a lot. I've got a lot of money, man. And every day I'm spending on booze and hookers. I mean, really. I mean, I'm just really this evil prick, and this is just me using word manipulation. I'm brilliant at it, but do I have a lot? I mean, right now, there's a woman under my desk, paid for by a very rich people.
By the Koch brothers.
By the Koch brothers. Hey,
Yeah.
Those are my actually employers. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm actually being paid by the Koch brothers.
Oh, well, you are. So,
So is Joe. I'm not going to let you get off scot-free, Joe.
Well,
I wear my button. This is my button right here.
My last Coke check was $100,000, which is why you can see the masterful artwork.
I wasn't kidding when I said I'm actually getting paid by the Koch brothers.
I know, but you know what? That's for doing something. What is it you actually do for them? I don't know, but you're actually working for that instead of pontificating on the internet.
Right.
So then the rich are only rich because of the state is the next point that the straight dope wants us to acknowledge. Well, you know what? Partly, yeah. Some
rich, not all, and some poor are only poor because of the state, or that's like saying all women are jerks or all men are pigs. I mean, some. Why are you putting all the rich in this one group?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The fact is that there are some people who actually have a talent or a service that people demand in a significant amount, which gets them money, like Michael Jordan, like Michael J. Fox, or I don't know, Martin Sheen. There are people who have abilities that only they have, and they get paid big money to do that. Now, whether it's a CEO who is best able to find emerging markets and to have good ideas as far as like how to create leverage with business partners and things like that, that's definitely going to create some value, and there are going to be people who are going to pay him a lot of money. But then there's also CEOs that will use the state to create barriers to entry for competition, and they do get really wealthy by manipulating the systems that they have to deal with through the government, by restricting the amount of badges that are available for taxi cab drivers, for example, in New York City. It costs $100,000 to get a badge to be able to drive a taxi cab in New York City.
Look at the last. I want to address. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I see this question as more a question about would there be monopolies in an anarcho-capitalist society, and I guess most people think that obviously there would be monopolies, and they would be even bigger and badder than what we see today.
I think that's a different question, but it does kind of tie into it. But let's go to Rothschild's question, response to this question, and then I'll explain the monopoly thing too.
I'm also going to explain the monopoly thing as well, because why not? But look, this is sort of testable. The rich, because we were kidding around before, but the rich are fans of libertarians. Well, let's take a look at let's take a look at the people running for office and see who gets the most donations. If it was libertarians, then you would have a point. So look, did Ron Paul and Gary Johnson get the most out of anyone running for president last term from big organizations? No, otherwise no. So this is complete and utter nonsense. in terms of, well, without a government, there'd be monopolies. Well, government is a monopoly. It's a monopoly on the legitimized use of coercion. So, if monopolies are bad, why does the government exist? There's nothing preventing other people from competition besides stringent government regulation, besides government coercive barrier to entry, besides licenses and permits. So, the biggest anti-capitalists in the world are capitalists. Well, not really capitalists, but big business, in the sense that every business is not a fan of competition, and they use the state as a form of rent-seeking to prevent it. But the solution isn't more governmental power. The solution is remove the government and allow competition to flourish. The government is that thing which props up monopolies, which prevents competition. Government is the enemy of progress. Government wants people who think the same. Government wants obedience. Government doesn't really want to divide and conquer, I think, as Christopher Cantwell helped convince me. Government wants uniformity. Government wants is the enemy of competition and free enterprise. So that's sort of my response.
Okay, and then the monopoly question. Let's take, for example, Standard Oil or Ford or the meatpacking companies that had dominance in their era. Well, basically what they did was they provided a solution that was so optimized and so low priced that competition didn't want to try to enter the marketplace. They said, to try to sell my oil at their prices and the amount of cost that it would take to get into the industry, buying all the equipment, the refineries and all that type of stuff, it would just be cost prohibitive, so they don't do it. But then what's bad about that monopoly then? If they're charging a price that is so low that you're getting the price below what it is that other people would want, to try to compete for, it's not really a bad thing. They may be the only people in town that are offering the product or service, but they can't take advantage of it. If they jack up the prices, lo and behold, somebody else can come in and make a profit by undercutting them. So by creating a situation where you've got a government, though, all they have to do is just say, all right, well, an additional cost of coming into the market is going to be zoning laws and regulations and all these other things that require to comply with in order to be in a business. So you've got to employ all these lawyers and that's all this extra fees and all these different things. So by creating additional barriers to entry, they can then jack up the price and make it more and more expensive. Thus, we have actual cartels that exist now. The cartels like the healthcare industry. People ask, what can we do to make healthcare affordable? Make it competitive. Actually provide an opportunity for people who want to do the product or service of medicine, whether it be making the drugs or providing the service. Make it competitive so that way people will undercut each other, and you go to the guy who's going to provide you with the health care that you want at the price you want, that you're willing to pay. So,
are you saying that a big monopolist today, let's say the CEO of a major company that's upheld by a government monopoly, would be against anarcho-capitalism because it would introduce more competition? But there are other businessmen who would be for it who wanted more competition, the little guys, I guess. And so most big monopoly CEOs would probably be against anarcho-capitalism. But I wanted to talk about the Koch brothers, because this is a big topic right now. The Koch brothers are paying for a lot of people to study libertarianism and even a few to study anarcho-capitalism. I am, full disclosure, I am being paid a small amount, a couple $1,000 for a summer program. I got a scholarship in, and I was thinking, so is this helping the Koch brothers turn a gigantic profit? Me talking on the internet to 3 other guys about anarcho-capitalism? I mean, is this their devious plan that we're going to, you know, make millions of dollars on Google Hangouts and you know, and me spouting my opinions? I mean, I'm barely doing anything. You know, we're trying to do as much as we can to make the world a better place, but I don't see that as a viable business strategy for any businessman to pay off anarcho-capitalists. And just like you said, I wish I could point to the millions of dollars that I was making off of this.
Yeah, it'd be great. So
Yeah.
I'm going to change topics now to one that should ride us out to the end of the show. We've got 9 minutes left, and that's not much time to actually go over this one. If you don't have IP, how do artists make a living?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a tough one. Oh, I got it. They have patrons, like they did back ages ago when they had the aristocracy funding their, Mozart, Beethoven, and so on. But it doesn't have to be the uber rich. Now we have the ability to be patrons of those people that we like through systems like what I don't know. I'll give you an example for a different art form, which is video game playing and video game commentary. There's this site called Twitch.tv. Now, if you've never been to Twitch.tv, their service is so that you can actually watch people playing video games live, commenting on games that are being played in competitive environments, and you can subscribe to them, and you pay like $4.95 per month to have special perks that they offer. Now, that works for that type of community. Now, there's another system. I forget what the name of it is, but if you were to go to the guy that that does the Meets Metal video series on YouTube, where he does like the Frozen theme song, but he plays it with a electric guitar with metal.
You're talking about Patreon?
Mm-hmm. That service will let you subscribe or pay for these musicians to actually, do their thing. And the funny thing about it is that you actually get people paying for what it is that they really like. And you don't have the spoon-fed bullshit that the recording studios want to push out there to be big. Okay? Like Pentatonics used to be this tiny, just group of three kids who did some music, and they were fairly popular. But then they got together with a couple of other guys, went on a talent show, and the popularity of them exploded from that, and now they're making tours all over the world, really producing incredible music, and they do get a lot of funding from selling their music and so on, even though you can actually go on and download their music for free anytime you want.
Right. I was thinking about if I was a musician and I was trying to make a lot of money, what would I want? What would be more important for me as a beginning musician? Money or reputation? And I think that reputation would actually be more important, a good reputation, because if a lot of people knew about my free music, then I could have a lifetime of making a lot of money rather than a one-hit wonder. And I wanted to apply it to clothes. Like the other day, I was watching Rachel Ray, and I'm embarrassed to say I was watching Rachel Ray, and they had a segment on there called Splurge or Save, where they would have 2 models come out, and one is wearing the designer clothes, and the other is wearing the ripoff. And so the audience had to guess which is the cheaper version of the Calvin Klein, and obviously everyone got it wrong. And so what's going on is that companies are ripping off other companies when it comes to fashion and clothing, and they're selling it in Walmart or Target for hundreds of dollars cheaper. But does that put Calvin Klein out of business, or does that put the major brands out of business? No, because they're first to the market, and so there's also a market, in clothing and other things for just to be first, and you could make a lot of money just being first. So,
and another thing is that if somebody has their trademark label, and somebody else copies that, now at this point we've actually reached the point of fraud, where somebody is making a claim that they are someone when they're not. And if you buy a product that, let's say it says Levi's, and you're wearing these jeans and they end up, breaking down fairly quickly, you know that they're not Levi's because Levi's makes good jeans. I'm not actually sure about this, but let's just assume that Levi's makes really solidly constructed jeans. Well then, if your jeans fail to live up to your expectations, and then you find out that the label is actually a fake one, that it actually wasn't Levi's that made these jeans, well then you've got a case for fraud, and you've got a legitimate claim, and then there's going to be a class action lawsuit, and the person who's making these fake jeans are going to go out of business.
right, and there's also a market for people who want the right branding. I mean, I asked my mom about, would you rather wear something that you knew was the brand name, or something that was $100 cheaper, that wasn't the brand name, but was exactly the same? And she said no, she would rather pay $100 for the brand name, because someone might find out that it was the wrong brand, or there might be something in the fabric or quality, and if someone found out, then her reputation would go out the window and people would see her as a fraud. I mean, this is the way people think about clothing. A lot of people do think about brands are better. And
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely, they're buying a different product. When you're buying a product that has some sort of emotional cash associated with a brand name, it is a different product than the same product that just doesn't have that emotional cash. So yes, the purse might be identical as far as the actual functionality, the materials, the workmanship, all of that's identical, but this one happens to be a Gucci. So it's somehow legitimate in a emotional way, whereas the other one isn't, and so it's a different product. Well, I think that we've come to the end of the show. Again, I do want to thank my co-host, Daniel Rothschild, for joining us, and our guest. Thank you as well for coming on, Joe. Let's see if we can get any more questions for the future. So if you have other questions you'd like us to answer on the Anarchist Experience, please comment on this show in YouTube, and we will try to address them on our next show. Thank you. Have a great evening.
aloha.